Om Shanti. Welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. And our topic in this session is Beyond Weaknesses. So we'll start with a little reflection. One of the terms that we use so much in creating spiritual awareness is that I, the soul, am seated on the throne of the forehead. The throne is a seat of power, mastery, in creating spiritual awareness. I'm also shifting into a state of power. I had lost so much of my power by seating myself in external positions, roles, responsibilities, physicality. I lost all mastery. I was deeply affected by the ever-changing landscape of the outer world, those external positions. But now I become stable. Become aware of myself as an eternal being, not physical at all. I am making the body move. I am the master of the physical senses. And as a spiritual being, I have intrinsic qualities that are very elevated, filled with dignity, and very powerful. The throne of the forehead gives me the power to transform. To not be enslaved to the past, but to experience the greatness of what is eternal. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. So this evening's topic is Beyond Weaknesses. As you had shared in the commentary, this aspect of power.
Mm-hmm.
So what is power? What does it feel like? How is that different from physical power?
In spirituality, power is, and actually this is the case in physicality too, but it's become very distorted. In spirituality, power is the capacity actually to, we say let go, but it really is to maintain integrity, to not be influenced. So to maintain the intrinsic qualities of the soul is power. To not succumb to the gravity of physicality, which actually is the same, ultimately the same definition of power physically, is to be able to overcome the pull of physical gravity, not come into inertia.
Would you say that lightness then has a bit of a negative connotation? Sometimes when I think of letting go, it makes me think about this feeling of being light, but I often hear that lightness is sometimes sort of put in a category of being very superficial.
That happens physically as well. That what has happened again, I don't think this was the original case, but we now physically think of power as being able to lift very heavy amounts of weights and all sorts of, there's a lot of heaviness in our concept of power. When in fact it takes tremendous power physically or spiritually to be light. To move lightly, physically or spiritually through the world takes a lot of power.
So when it comes to, I know you've explained in the past about having a physically strong core, and not for us to go into really the depths of the physical example, but the parallel of it. What has that experience been like for you when the core is strong? Because I think many just feel like it's about girding.
It's funny what's happened again physically, and I think it happens spiritually as well, that the approaches to core have become the opposite of what was intended. So when the core is strong, we actually physically get taller and lighter. But many do core work, which shortens and compresses. And I think that sometimes there's this feeling around spirituality as well, dismissing, that is anything happening when one is light, that we get very serious around spirituality, and that must mean that something's happening. But in fact, this core of soul consciousness makes the soul more dignified, more light, more royal, which is again the sign of power.
So, what are you feeling inside when you know that you're in that stage that feels like it's spiritual power?
I think the biggest thing actually is not to react. There's a very strong sense of integrity. The intrinsic qualities of the soul are available. So to not react, but be able to respond in a light way, in a dignified way, in a respectful way, that feels like power.
Sometimes you hear souls say, I'm going to try not to react, I'm going to try to be peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to actually be very clear in sensing if it's coming from a real place.
Yeah, I think every reaction starts inside. So, ideally, we're looking for this to be very natural. So it's not that I am suppressing something and then it's happening inside and trying to present something externally, but that in very sincerely, genuinely inside, I feel very differently inside because of soul consciousness. I feel very differently inside. So it's very natural that something different happens externally.
So, where is this aspect of detaching from my weaknesses? I know the title is being beyond or staying beyond weaknesses, and the role of yoga.
I think if we think of the opposite of weakness as power, what yoga is doing is giving the soul power. We're taking power from the Supreme Soul so that I'm able to do a couple of things. I'm able to now see from that position of the connection of power, I'm able to see with clarity what is going on inside the self. So this clarity around the self improves, but also this freedom, we can say detachment, this freedom to be a detached observer of what I see and not be affected, even though it might still be there. I'm now standing in a position of power, so I'm able to observe it, be aware of it, but not really succumb to it, not feel that it is my identity.
Is this where the role of knowledge, for those who may not have taken the Raj Yoga course, there's a large bulk of the course is learning knowledge.
I think that knowledge, we even call it, the eye of knowledge. Knowledge is very helpful and it's giving me a different perspective. But we also always say, I don't want it to just the knowledge to just be intellectual. I want it to really get to the level of feeling or heart. And I think that yoga makes that possible.
When you are experiencing knowledge, is that what you mean by yoga?
The connection with the Supreme Soul changes how I function so that I'm able to, we're very, very intellectual and we can certainly talk a lot about knowledge, but in terms of, if you will, embodying it, that's what yoga makes possible, that I can absorb the knowledge.
So basically, it's as if I have the knowledge, but I need to absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to be in like this internally healthy state to
Mm-hmm.
absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
But there needs to be a balance between the two.
I think of it as an upward spiral. We sort of start with knowledge, makes this possible to have yoga in which I'm actually living the knowledge. And that makes the knowledge go in a little bit more differently or deeper, which improves the yoga so that again, I'm getting closer and closer to simply embodying what I'm studying.
So there's a phrase that's often used in the study in terms of look at your heart, watch yourself, examine yourself, and do you see any weaknesses inside? Do you see perhaps maybe attitudes inside, and to remove them? What does that really mean?
I always feel that we it's more of a replacement. We can't remove something unless there's something else to be there. Like I can only remove it once I'm standing somewhere else. So the phrase we use, I can't establish, I need to establish before we can destroy, if you will. So the feeling that I need to accumulate power or be in a more powerful place to be able to address the weaknesses with some authority.
Mm-hmm. How about this aspect of detachment?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that I'm actually, because sometimes souls hear the word detach and they're just trying to let it go, not replacing, and they're trying to use the knowledge, and they're actually forcing things. It's not a response. It's actually trying to basically not be affected by things, but there's some suppression, there's some rejection going on. Just as you were clarifying that there needs to be a replacement. How does knowledge play a role in terms of this replacement?
Actually, when I was thinking about the topic, I almost feel it's knowledge is very, very important. But I was actually feeling obedience is really critical in navigating through this. And that will involve knowledge, because one of the things we're trying to honor is how we study the knowledge. But if I have someone doing an exercise that is not accurate and is only inviting injury, we try to explain definitely what's going on. So we try and educate, but we give directions about what they need to do instead. And the hope is they trust you and they're listening to this educational piece, but they need to really execute what you're saying. And this is a big part of spiritual study, is that we really have come to it with ideas in our head of what we should do, our own directions, if you will. Even though we're experiencing sorrow by what we're doing, we're very, if you will, attached to our own ideas and directions. And so we actually say this: renouncing or letting go, trusting might be another word, and being obedient to some different ideas and directions is a huge part of this.
Mm-hmm. I find it very interesting when you're sharing about this aspect of detachment, that it could still be there, whatever it is, and to actually have different feelings about it. Most really feel like, oh, I don't even want a trace of it. There's quite a bit of battling that can happen.
And I think that will, if I'm not standing somewhere else, it's like I'm trying to do tug of war with only one side pulling. Really need to be sort of developing and nurturing this other position to stand in. And lately there's been a lot. There's actually every day there's so much focus on practicing what we call soul consciousness, the very, very basic. I cannot go beyond weaknesses or really any other aspects of transformation without following that direction. And I woke up this morning and asked myself, are there aspects of this spiritual study I do without being soul conscious? And I think for many, the answer is yes. So it's really not, it is going to be a battle. So am I really obedient or following the first direction? It's a spiritual process. Am I even in a spiritual state? Am I even soul conscious? Have I practiced that?
Many find that soul consciousness is a very one-dimensional experience or one-dimensional practice for themselves. And it feels like still not being able to move into that world.
I think when, this idea, it's very powerful when souls start the course and it's explained to them that the entry point and the whole focus of the Course is this question, who am I? And I know it's going to sound strange, but I think what makes soul consciousness fascinating to us is the idea that this is who I am. How that can be dry and two-dimensional, knowing who I am, I don't know. So I haven't really connected, and I can understand why, because we made this idea of the soul separate. I have a soul. So that's why it sort of stays very two-dimensional and dry. There is nothing more fascinating and engaging to, that I am a soul. I don't even know what I am. I should be fascinated and intrigued to experience. It's like I'm a different species than what I thought. So I think to make the connection that I am a soul is the answer to the question, who am I? And that should theoretically be of concern or interest to us. To experience that. And if it is dry, two-dimensional, inaccessible, then I need to sort of sit and see, have I connected? I am a soul with the answering the question, who am I?
We often learn in the Course about what I'm like. I am point of light. And many actually don't realize that they get caught at that point in terms of visualizing I'm a soul. Or sort of visualizing a point of light, and there's no sense of a personality with that.
It's funny when I go to the eye doctor, once a year, or when something goes funny with the eye, they always have me do, I think, 3 or 4 tests. I'm rather used to them now. So, and there's one, and quite a few of them actually, they fascinate me because I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get a very in-depth understanding of what's going on with the eye, the optic nerve, the state or health of the eye. That's, if we will, the back end of what they're trying to do. But the way the tests are set up fascinate me because they'll say, okay, a little point of light is going to appear on the screen in front of you. Focus on that. And so I'll look at this point of light, and one might think they're testing as my capacity, but they're not. They're actually trying to get a very good picture of the health of the eye. And what's required for my eye to focus on a point of light is what's of interest, not the point of light itself, but what I need, what happens to the eye when it focuses on a point. And so the same idea that, my sense of self has become so diffused and assimilated into physicality. And then to say, you are not any of those things. What can I give you to focus on instead? You are a point. You're like a point is actually the true definition of soul. You're like a point. And in doing that, it's really focusing on the point isn't as interesting as what happens to me when I focus on the point, the degree of letting go that happens without disappearing. And, what then does it feel like to be me? When I let go of all physicality, but I still exist. What's that feeling? That's what we're trying to get to.
And lately, I've been really feeling there's a difference between when you are letting go of everything and there's just you, and just sort of forcing yourself to be something, but there's no letting go.
Right.
It's subtle. It's a subtle feeling, but I'm not sure if that even makes sense to others.
Yeah, no, the ultimate thing we need is the detachment. That's the thing that we're going for in all of this. And seeing what remains when you let go of not everything, but everything physical, everything temporal. So only the eternal remains. That's what we're trying to do, and it's a very deep level of detachment. So, not to alarm anyone, but the phrase we often use is dying alive. I'm obviously still alive, but that same degree of detachment, everything I put the label mine onto is no longer mine. When you leave the body, that life is gone. So really the depth of spirituality is a very free state. I let go of everything physical. What is eternal, I am experiencing. So the eternal nature of the self, the eternal form of the self, the eternal story of the self, all of that is very vibrant. So there's still me, I'm still here. I'm just not defined in the way I have been defining myself or experiencing myself. I mean, we think we're the body.
One of the things I found that been really finding very meaningful and enjoying is experiencing I exist, irrespective of the body around me. And even like whatever internal stuff is happening. And feeling pocket moments of just trying to go into that experience. It's very liberating. What will you share in terms of that freedom versus this kind of freedom of trying to get away and avoid?
I don't think we have any of the attainments in the latter one you described. When we're trying to escape, get away, avoid, it's a bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater or this isolation. I'm not experiencing, although I'm letting go of all the things, there's just loss versus I'm letting go in order to attain or experience something different. So I want to kind of check in, not check out. I want to embrace the eternal, not just push away the temporary.
Do you feel that when I was sharing that, just little moments of just practicing that again and again, that builds, accumulates?
Drop by drop is how it works, and the nice thing about it being drop by drop is I have the chance to check if each of those drops is sincere, authentic. Am I really doing it? Am I really doing it? We know that, the first student of this organization, the instrument to establish it, Brahma Baba, he had the whole journal filled with I am a soul, and that was drop by drop. Every time he wrote I am a soul, he could stop and check the sincerity of the experience. Am I there? Like, am I really in the experience? Okay. And again, I am a soul. So it really feels like drop by drop, accumulating the power of the truth.
It really feels like such a focus on quality and trusting that quality will actually lead to something very effective.
Absolutely. I always feel that there's nothing wrong with quantity, but it should chase after or follow quality. Where there's quality, there will definitely be quantity, but it's perhaps a slower route. We want those results, those outcomes, and so we're willing to even fake that sense of self or be deceived because we want so much the outcomes. But those I see who take the quality approach, it might seem a little slower, a little less seems to be going on, but the results are far more enduring.
What have you felt in terms of just such a, it's such a simple practice, drop by drop. And there's one aspect of really being able to be detached from the body while you're in it and still feel yourself. Oh.
Battery died.
I didn't think it would lose its battery that quickly. We lost those on Instagram. What do you feel like such a simple practice? And there, as I was saying, the detachment from the body, but what have you felt through these years in the study? The experience of accumulating when it comes to detaching from your thoughts and emotions that come up?
I think we when we're in transition, it's a really fascinating space because the past is sort of pulling And this is where the beyond weaknesses happens. The past is pulling. We can feel the past pulling, but we're also at the same time experiencing something new. So we're in this transition between old and new. And it's really critical. And, when we say knowledge, it's a bit of, let me tell you what this is going to feel like. Let me make you aware of what this is going, so you don't become disheartened or doubting.
When things come.
Yeah, I had a soul I was talking to recently, and they are prone to, they have medical treatment for some mental health concerns. And they were really, but they're also, there's spiritual practice going on, and they're experiencing some wonderful results. And so they wanted to just reduce their dosage a bit. And it was a really fascinating conversation because they reduced it a bit and they started to feel anxiety. And so then they went back to the original dosage and they felt disheartened. And it was, well, it's completely understandable. It's obviously a fine balance between what's that line between really developing that faith in the self, perhaps, and also being aware how much anxiety can I tolerate as I'm reducing the dosage. But the main thing was they had to be very aware of what was going to happen when they made changes, whether it's changes in their dosage or changes in their attitudes towards themselves. What was going to happen when there's a change in the dosage? There is going to be a little bit more anxiety. When there's a change in attitudes in the self, the old stuff's going to fight back and oppose. I need to know that so that I don't jump ship. So this is where knowledge is really, really powerful, is that I am aware of what it's going to feel like. I was once told by a physiotherapist this process of healing, and that once one starts to heal just 10%, they feel as if they've healed 100%. And they start to jump around as if everything's fine. This is the worst possible thing to do. So he's always educating on what to expect on the journey towards healing. And if I'm not aware, then I can be deceived or develop doubt. So yes, we're in transition between old and new, and there is going to be some opposing, some battling, some ups and downs. It is power to just know that that's going to happen, so I'm not deceived.
Do you find that when you first came to the study and you were told that, and that it takes time to actually, I'm not sure what the words are, but that upheaval internally may happen, but okay, I was told that. But there are some habits that seem to come out, thoughts and things like that come, which is quite reactive.
So this is where the yoga, it takes the power of purity to wield the sword of knowledge. This is the whole King Arthur, and what's the boy who pulls the sword out of the stone, right? That it takes the power of purity to wield the sword of truth. And so this is why intellectual is so frustrating. It's that, okay, I've got the knowledge, but I don't have the power of purity to wield it, to actually use it. I can speak it, but I can't apply it. So I need to be having yoga. I need to be getting that power of purity from an accurate connection with Supreme Soul, so I can wield the sword of knowledge and really help myself.
Do you mean I need to accumulate?
Yeah.
So it's not like I really need to be in a better posture.
No, just accumulate. When we look at the successful students in this study, we say that they are equal in all the subjects. If I'm very heavy in knowledge, but I'm not, the two main tools in this practice is knowledge and yoga. And the wheels need to move along together. We tend to be very intellectual, we're very drawn to the knowledge. There's now a plethora of knowledge available online, and we often are joking that we're like couch potatoes. We sit and we listen to class after class, and we're just getting indigestion because we don't give time to digest and we aren't doing the other side, the yoga that actually gives me the power. So for the time that I'm watching or listening, yes, I feel that something very exciting is going on. We even say I had great experiences, but at the time of need, am I able to apply that knowledge?
So when you mentioned the power of purity to wield that sort of knowledge that I need to really accumulate yoga. When you say wield a sort of knowledge, do you mean that I need to be able to absorb it to the level that actually changes my feelings of things so that at the time of need, my responses have changed? But I still need to apply it. And many souls get stuck. I know one you had spoken to is like, what am I supposed to do with myself internally through the day?
We ideally want to start to see transformation of thoughts and attitudes and even actions, or we say sanskars, what's being expressed. And this incredible tolerance that's needed to do that. So I'm getting knowledge about basically what I am capable of, what I've been doing, these weaknesses, but also the capacities of the soul is really explained in Raj Yoga. So I obviously want to start to express those capacities, but the reactivity, the old stuff keeps coming up. So how can I override? How can I, without any violence? And so I need to have a lot of understanding, and I need a lot, again, not just knowledge, but I need a lot of power, purity to be able to apply that understanding to, from the heart, have a different response.
I know we're trying to bring it all back to this beyond weaknesses. So I was really thinking about this letting go, to be able to be in the midst of it. All of that, of course, is what yoga is for, but to be unaffected by it, not disheartened as you move along.
Yes, and I think, as much as we can accumulate experiences of honoring what is intrinsic in the self, this also helps us to move beyond weaknesses. If we keep operating through the lens of those weaknesses, then it's going to become very difficult. So sitting in silence, sitting with the knowledge in silence, and that's, that yoga, that power to absorb the knowledge, it's almost like a change in diet. That if I eat certain foods, then my performance will always be a certain way. But if I can switch the diet, it helps to change the performance. But diet doesn't just mean I put things in the mouth. It does mean I absorb this yoga, this absorption experience. And then it gives me the power to change how I'm operating. This is going beyond weaknesses, that I no longer act through those weaknesses.
So just one final question, and then does it then change your sensitivities?
I think you're both less sensitive and more sensitive. Less sensitive in terms of, again, that reactivity or the emotions, but more sensitive in that you're more aware, more discerning. So we were actually quite insensitive to what was going on inside of us, not aware at all. So I'm very aware, very discerning, but I'm not as affected.
Well, I know we're starting to run over time, and perhaps we'll have a little reflection.
Sitting quietly, I feel myself withdrawing inside. During the day, so much activity, so many tasks, so much to do. It can become a whirlwind of constant motion. But as I sit here now, I am pulled towards stillness and simplicity. Going deeper and deeper inside. Less of the whirlwind, and no real sense of time. The feeling of moving into the eye of a storm. Everything worldly swirling around outside. And I am the observer from this quiet, calm place. This alignment, this concentrated state of stillness and awareness. This is a place of power. From this place, I can observe what's going on with more clarity, both inside the self and around the self. But also from this alignment, I can connect to the Supreme Soul, the source of power. As many times as possible during the day, let me come deep inside the eye of the storm, observing with clarity and connecting to receive that power. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. I'm not sure if the registration is still open for the Raj Yoga Foundations, but the session starts tomorrow for 4 Wednesdays in July. However, there is also a Hindi full course Raj Yoga. I believe it starts on the 16th, so it's 2 weekends. And so you're welcome to visit the center's website to register for that. Not sure if there's any other sessions. Aside from our Experience drop-in sessions, which we always encourage.
Yeah, just visiting the website, I guess, is best.
But as has been mentioned, the experiencing, not just passively listening, hopefully that inspires you. So thank you for joining me.